It's an interesting spike. Check my settings here. Oh, yeah. Output looks good. Nothing changed in the meantime. Very good, very good. That is nice. How's my first world internet hanging up? Okay so far. Okay. Yeah, we're looking good. Dropped frames 0. Very good. Very good. You like to see it. You hope it continues. Pretty stable tonight. Knock on wood. CPU is spiking a little bit, but it's not too far above normal. So that's okay. Filters are on. Ah, there it goes, there it goes. See, I shouldn't have tempted fate like that. Never tempt fate. The 3 fates will always win, you know? If you ever get into a fight with the 3 fates, they'll measure the length of the string, they'll cut it, and they'll say that's that. You lose. Good day. It was so stable just a couple minutes ago. Yeah, hate to see it. It's okay, I can monitor that. Yeah. Let me just, okay. Okay. Eyelash in my eye. That is far too common a problem, having an eyelash in my eye. It's these long eyelashes, you know? A lot of people don't have that problem. They'll just get the normal amount of eyelash in their eye. But me, I get more eyelashes in my eye, and they're also longer than average. Very good. Thank you, genetics. Yeah. Okay. Hey there, hi there. It's Hyde here. I know. Big surprise, right? It's good to be back. We're going to be playing Fishing Universe Simulator on the Nintendo Switch again, because that's pretty much all I do for these streams anymore. I really like streaming this game. Oh, I didn't even sell my fish last time. What was I doing? Yeah, that's not great. I should probably record if I can. Let's try that out, see if it overloads my computer. It shouldn't. It didn't before. Yeah, okay, CPU is holding steady. So if I have to, I will upload a different VOD version of this, I guess. Do we want to go to the lake? No, there are birds at the lake. I remember this. Let's go to Rocky River. It's been a while since we've been to the river, right? Yeah. So I've got things to talk about. Ooh. I always remember how badly this game plays when I get into it. Like, ooh. It's like, playing in Jello. I love it. Yeah. So I do have topics today, you know? Ooh, you know what? I'm getting a little bit of input delay here. I don't usually. It seems like a problem. But we'll just work through it, you know? It's fine if I get a little bit of input delay. It's a fishing game, not a platformer. I was thinking about, after I finish Centum, I do want to play more games like that, low-effort streams more often. I didn't get to do it this week, but I do want to do more of that. And I have a couple lined up where I'll probably just play the game, and if you want to keep me company, that'd be great. Ooh, that's not great. And I'm always looking for more, right? Like, if you think that there's an interesting story-driven game where I can read it out like a point-and-click like Centum, that'd be ideal, right? Like, a lot of people just want to hear my voice. They don't want to interact necessarily. Although you're more than welcome to. That's kind of the point of the stream. To interact if you want to interact, or to listen to me talk for an hour if you want to listen to me talk for an hour or two. Yeah. If the internet allows it. First world internet, yay! But I have a couple lined up, so if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. Or, I guess, if you're part of my Discord, feel free to leave something in the general chat. Yeah, that's a thing. I do have a couple lined up. I have a couple point-and-clicks, story-driven games. I want to get back into Ghostbusters, the video game remastered. I just haven't gotten there yet. I feel like I ought to complete the Hyde and Jekyll project, and I have another 35 minutes of content to edit together. Unfortunately, my editing software is being a big jerk about things, and it doesn't like importing the video from my old hard drive, for whatever reason. So, I don't know what to do about that. I think, and this is gonna really suck, that I'm going to have to upload it to YouTube, and then download it from YouTube in order to actually edit it properly. I don't know. I don't know. The software is just not playing nice. It works perfectly fine for any of the new videos I've recorded on this hard drive, but for whatever reason, corruption or something didn't transfer properly. I can still play the videos that I've recorded previously, so they don't seem too corrupted if they are. I can still upload them to YouTube, but I can't edit them, so, you know, I'm having a fun time of doing that, not editing the videos I've already recorded, which is great. Uh, um, I actually wanted to start today by talking about a dream I had. Like, I don't really usually remember dreams if I do dream. I'm not the type that has dreams as far as I'm aware. Okay, give me 1 second. And we will see what's going on here. It's not one thing, it's another. The joys of playing on actual hardware. Am I right or am I right? Um, let's see here. There we go. And that is correct. Sorry about the interruption there. I got disconnected from the game. I don't even know how that happened. These things will happen though. You just gotta do some live troubleshooting, right? Like, I thought I was fishing here, but obviously we're not. We're troubleshooting. Still and forever. Let's go back to the Rocky River, and we'll see how she holds. Yeah. I do like this river. It reminds me a lot of places I've fished before, even in the rain. Um, the thunder and lightning, those are all authentic to my fishing experiences. But no, don't let me get sidetracked. We're talking about, we're talking about my dream, right? A lot of people, they remember their dreams pretty vividly, some more so than others. But I'm pretty much in the opposite camp where I don't remember anything I dream if I do dream at all. And I assume I do, right? Like, I go into REM cycle sleep a lot, I hope. I've had sleep studies done, and it does seem like I at least used to go into REM cycle sleep, and I still occasionally do remember my dreams. I think it's a matter of waking up in a certain cycle. Yeah, okay, that's a lot better. My input delay is a lot better now. So yeah, it was very interesting that I woke up and remembered this dream. Um, it's very strange. So if you want like a trigger warning for gross things, yeah, you're gonna get that. In fact, all of the topics I have to discuss tonight are kind of heavy in a way. So if that's not your cup of tea, feel free to not watch the stream. I'd understand. A lot of VTubing and sharing time with people who are streamers, they're uh they're not really there for heavy topics, but sometimes that's what's on my mind and we'll go there. This one's going to be a little bit gross. It does relate to my content though. So my dream last night, and it was like this morning when I woke up, uh, I was at a family gathering, and someone mentioned that I had a mark on my arm, right? And I looked at both of my arms. I distinctly remember looking at both of my arms. The first one, I didn't see anything. And the second one, I saw this weird, fleshy, tumorous mass on my arm. Like right on the inside of the elbow, where blood typically gets drawn. And it was very interesting looking, right? It wasn't just any tumorous mass. It had a sort of open wound kind of look to it. And there was a honeycomb configuration uh, right in the middle. It was very strange. It was kind of like a beehive with cells. I really don't know how else to describe it. And it was gross. It was pulsing and fleshy, pink and inflamed, all that kind of stuff. It very much looked like an open wound, like bees had grown a beehive in my arm. um, and after like looking at it for a while, something started happening. It started growing, and out of it grew a flower. A flower sprouted, a purple one, very pretty, in fact. And then there were leaves, and then it started I dreamed that. I have some theories. I was watching Roanoke Gaming's video on ghouls from Fallout, right? And he was talking about different mutations to mitotic processes and whatever else, and why they had ghoulified flesh, scarred tissue. It was very interesting. Um, and the more I watched it, the more it would grow until it got to a certain point where it was touching the ground. And at the point that it touched the ground, it started withering and dying. The vine was drying up, the leaves were withering, the flower petals were drooping and dropping, and I was kind of transfixed by it. But yeah, I know exactly why I dreamt it, right? I was watching some of my older content, specifically the Salting Wounds video. You remember the Salting Wounds video, right? Maybe you haven't seen it. It's on my channel. I really liked that interactive fiction. More of a visual novel with choices, I guess. But yeah, Salting Wounds had a very similar premise. It was called Apollonaria sanguinis, I believe. Blood flowers. And they were flowers that bloomed from the blood of the kid in the story. It didn't have to be a kid. Apparently there were a lot of people who had the same problem. But I was watching that video not too long ago, and I was thinking to myself, Yeah, this portrayal of Jekyll is rather interesting, isn't it? Like, he just doesn't care about anything at this point. And that was my first thought, right when I woke up. Yeah, I've been watching too much of my own content. And I don't usually dream about my content. Like, I know a lot of people say that dreams are this amalgamation of whatever you do throughout the day. And I agree with that, generally. A lot of dreams do seem to be just amalgamations of your own experiences throughout the day, or things that you thought about, or things that you saw. Things you might not have experienced yourself, but you imagined experiencing. I consider that experience as well. In fact, I consider dreams to be experiences too, but I don't usually dream, especially not about my content. So yeah, when I do, it's often very nightmarish, like nightmarish visions of living in a zombie apocalypse, trying to survive, bugging out when I have to, living in walls and ceilings especially. Like, for whatever reason, my brain just says, you know what, when there's a zombie outbreak, you gotta get inside of the walls, or you've gotta get into the ceilings. If you have drop ceilings, they can't get you then, right? A lot of zombies can't climb, unless we're talking about Day of the Dead remake zombies from like the 19... Ooh, when did that come out? The Day of the Dead remake. I don't remember. Did it come out after Dawn of the Dead or before? I don't know, but it was awful. They had superhuman zombies that could climb walls like spider monkeys. Yeah, not very great. Dawn of the Dead was a much better remake than Day of the Dead, surprisingly enough. There have been a lot of remakes for Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. I wasn't really going to talk about zombies, but you know what? We're talking about zombies, I guess. And yeah, they're not always consistent, the rules they play with, because there's always a different reboot. Here's a fun fact for you. Because of certain unmet obligations on the part of Romero and the guy who did The Return of the Living Dead, Night of the Living Dead, the first movie, the black and white one, is in public domain, which is why you can watch it on YouTube for free. And if anyone ever charges you for it, they're ripping you off, as long as it's the original one. Yeah. So make sure you don't pay for that, unless you go into theaters. That can be pretty fun too. Dressing up as a zombie and going into a theater, watching everybody just know what's gonna happen, right? Like, there are a lot of cult classic movies like that, which just come back to theater, and all the people just get into character, or they'll call out things like... I've heard of theaters showing The Room, Tommy Wiseau's The Room, and apparently it's very common for people who go to room watchings to throw plastic spoons and cutlery. So I don't know. There is an element of that with the classic. If that's your case, feel free, you know? I'm a big fan of classic movies coming back to cinemas. I wouldn't go to cinemas in the modern era, unless they were doing that. I don't think I've gone to see a movie since... It was one of the Resident Evil movies, the one that was 3D, right? I had to see it in 3D because it was filmed in 3D, so of course you're gonna watch it in 3D. And I've never watched it again since. I remember it was the one where Alice met Chris Redfield, so whichever one that was, it was a very bad movie. But, yeah, that was the last thing I ever saw in theaters. Yeah. So that tells you how long it's been. I'm pretty sure they made a couple more Resident Evil movies after that one. Yeah. I was talking about my dream, right? Yeah. It was very memorable. Memorable enough for me to want to talk about it. I know that's probably... I'm gonna increase my drag here. It's probably a pretty strange dream for a lot of people. A fleshy mass turning into flowers. It didn't really scare me. Like, if that happened in real life, I'd probably be pretty concerned. But in my dream, I was perfectly cool about it. I was just watching it, transfixed by the growing of the flower in my arm, and then the quick death of it. It's almost poetic in a way, right? Like there's almost a poetic element of the transience of life in the flower growing from my arm. Yeah, I liked it. I kind of liked it, but it wasn't as fun as a dream about zombies, you know? I feel like those are still better dreams. Okay, off the topic of zombies. Oh, you know what I wanted to talk about? Since we're playing a fishing game, I feel like it's only appropriate that I update you on my fishing habits. And since my last stream, I have again gone fishing. I took a nice morning and I spent a couple hours out fishing. Yeah. It was a less productive trip than the first time. I caught more on my first fishing trip. We had quite the cold snap, you know? Um, Things got below freezing, and they did freeze. But I thought it would warm up as the sun came up. I was wrong. I was very much wrong. But still, I felt like a couple of hours messing around in the freezing cold wasn't too bad an idea. But it was. It was a terrible idea. It was a horrible idea, in fact. Um, you know the fishing rod? Like, you see the fishing rod I have here. There's that little circle. Those little circles on the fishing rod, right next to the green thing. Yeah, follow the green thing, and you'll get to the eyelet. That's what that's called, an eyelet on the fishing rod. Inside of those, ice was forming. It was so cold, and that's not good. Ice is pretty sharp, or it can be, and that can cut your fishing line. I didn't have the problem of it cutting my fishing line. I had a different problem. When the ice formed in my eyelets, because the water was so cold and the air was so cold that it just froze as soon as it touched my fishing rod. The eyelets, like the line carries water up the fishing rod into the eyelets and along your reel. And that's exactly what happened. It froze completely solid. The center was just full of ice. So my fishing line pretty much froze to the fishing rod itself, which is not great. When that happens, you can have all kinds of problems. Your line can cut, it can cause casting problems, and it did. Or it can cause reel problems, right? So the reel is the thing I'm spinning right now with my left hand in this game. And that's spooling the line back onto itself so that it can contain the line, keep it nice and tidy. And what you want is to keep pressure. I'm going to increase the drag again. You want to keep pressure on the line, or else when you reel it back on, it's like a spool of thread, and the spool will just come undone in weird ways if you don't keep pressure on it, and that will result in bird's nests. That's what they're called. They look like tangles of, like exactly like a bird's nest. They're tangles of line that just get looped on themselves, create knots, and it was not fun. Because when you hit a bird's nest when you're casting, that can affect your casting as well. The line won't spool off of the reel very well, and you'll have all kinds of problems doing it. Yeah. So I had to take care of that. I had to cut off all of my line past the nest, and then retie my lines while my hands were too frozen to actually cooperate with the delicate knots that I typically tie on my fishing rigs. And I tie a lot of things, right? Like, my fishing rig is very strangely made. Come on. Come on. Am I snagged? Yeah, okay. I don't care. We're gonna fish over here, so we don't get snagged up there on the rocks. There we go. So yeah, that was fun. Trying to tie fishing lines, or fishing knots, in the freezing cold, when the lines are covered in ice. They didn't cooperate at all. And the first one I actually tied ended up snapping. So I cleared the ice from the eyelets, and I retied fresh line, right? I always take fresh line with me, and I recommend it when you're fishing, to always take fresh line with you. Don't just rely on what's like on your reel already. Because the real... Like, fishing line is made of nylon, more often than not when you get monofilament, especially it's nylon monofilament, which means it will absorb water. It's porous enough that it will absorb water. That'll weaken it, but the bonds are also weakened by things like direct UV radiation. And guess what you're fishing in? You're fishing in sunlight more often than not. You're keeping your fishing rod in your car with the windows, exposing it to UV radiation while you're driving. So yeah, there are concerns about UV radiation degrading your fishing line. You shouldn't just rely on it. And I don't. That's why I always take extra fishing line with me when I go fishing. And I'm happy I did this time, because that made things a lot better. So the second one I tied on there actually worked a lot better. Unfortunately, I didn't catch any fish after I did all of that work, but I did have a nice time. I don't usually fish when it gets that cold. I know the fish love it. A lot of freshwater fish love colder water. Here's a fun fact for all of you avid fisher or anglers out there. When water gets cold, when any liquid gets cold for the most part, but when a lot of liquids get cold, they can dissolve different gases much more easily. Think of it like when you have a soda. When a soda gets hot, the carbonation leaves it much more quickly, right? Yeah, the carbonation leaves it much more quickly, and you end up getting a flat soda. I'm gonna turn this down just a little bit. You end up getting a flat soda much more quickly than if you have it, say, refrigerated, right? That makes sense. Carbon dioxide is a gas, and so is oxygen. It's O2 in the case of breathable oxygen. Getting more input delay again. Anyway, when it's colder water, there's more oxygen dissolved in the water. And that's what the fish need their gills to take. They're not taking the atomic or molecular oxygen in water. They're taking the O2 that has been dissolved in the liquid. It's a solution, I guess, of oxygen in water. Yeah. This input delay is really bugging me. I'll have to figure out what's doing that. Anyway, yeah, so a lot of fish, because they're getting more oxygen from their water source, they'll actually be more active. They'll feed more, they'll swim more, they'll hunt more. So it's actually a great time to go fishing. But I don't like doing it because I don't like being cold, you know? My hands don't work as well when they're cold, so it's kind of a hassle to even try fishing. And then you have all kinds of, eyelet issues, line issues. There are a lot of issues to cold water fishing that you just have to be very careful of. This looks like a big fish. So I don't usually do it. I prefer something at least above freezing. Above freezing is ideal. I highly recommend it. But not too hot, right? If you fish in like 90-degree weather and the water is higher than like 75 degrees, that's actually a bad time to go fishing. Fish are going to be very sluggish, and when they do bite, you've got to be very careful not to overplay them, because it's very hard for them to, I guess, get back into the water and actually breathe properly. There's less oxygen to breathe, so they don't recover nearly as quickly in hot water. So you have to handle them a lot less than you would when you're fishing in colder water. Makes perfect sense, right? But I had a good day, and I had to go fishing. Like, I've been putting it off. I've had live bait since my first fishing trip, which was a while ago. And when I say live bait, it was getting a lot and a lot less lively by the day. Good morning, Diana. Just woke up. Yeah. It's been one of those sleepy kind of days. It feels like it's been a sleepy kind of week, I think, or even month. It's very rare for me to see the sun these days. So many gray clouds, yeah. I did actually get to see it on this fishing trip that I was describing, and I'm happy about that. Yeah, even though it was cold, I got to see the sun. And like I said, the live bait that I was keeping, it was getting less lively by the day. It had to be used, right? I don't like, it's cruel enough for me to take these tiny little organisms out of their native habitats, then to put them on a fishing line and use them as live bait. That's pretty cruel if you think about it. But it's even worse if you do that and then you don't use them as live bait, right? That's like worse than wasting food to me. You're playing with lives for no reason. Um, so I don't like letting live bait die without it getting used. So I had to use it. Um, Recently dead is fine. I've used baits that have been decomposing, and they work, especially for things that, will just eat anything. Bass and catfish in particular have no qualms about eating recently dead bait. But I feel it's wrong, you know? I feel like it's way too cruel to take them and just let them die. Maybe it's not as cruel. Maybe it's crueler to use them while they're alive and to throw them into the water and let them get chomped on. Like, that might be cruel. But, I don't know. I feel like it's akin to wasting food. You've got to use it when you have it, because you might not always have it. And I did have a little luck. It was a shorter fishing day. I only stayed out for a couple hours because of the cold. But, yeah. I caught some interesting fish this time. Fish that I don't usually catch. Um, for example, I hooked into my first white sucker of the year, and that's a real fish. You can look it up. White suckers, they're fun. I thought it was a fall fish at first. Fall fish are like the biggest species of minnow in the USA, and fall fish can get pretty big. They put up a nice fight, so a lot of anglers like catching them. But they also displace a lot of sports fish that other anglers like to catch. So a lot of anglers actually kill fall fish and suckers and leave them on the bank. Yeah, I know. It's quite a name, but it's a real fish. Um, it belongs to it belongs with the other sucker fish out there. Suckers are interesting, right? They have this little fleshy protruding mouth at the bottom of their ventrally located mouths, too. So they have a fish mouth dangling downwards, and it's kind of fleshy instead of bony. It's very gross looking, and they'll just suck stuff up off the bottom. So yeah, I hooked into one of those, and it was pretty big. I thought it was a fall fish, which tend to be quite silvery, until I got it into my landing net, and I saw that it had very dark colors, right? It had a dark dorsal coloration, and the coloration was so dark that I wasn't exactly sure what it was at first. I started looking at the mouth and I realized, oh, it's a sucker. And then I thought, okay, maybe it's this one fish. Um, it has dark bands along the back? No. No. It did not have the dark banding. See, there's this fish that I rarely see, right? It has an even funnier name, so I'll bring it up. The thing is called a hog sucker. um, I think you can understand the name, but that's it. The hog sucker. And to my knowledge, there are at least 3 different species of hog sucker in the USA. So I'm not going to tell you which one that I typically see. Some are quite regional, um, but I don't want to go into that. But there are 3 different species of hog sucker in the USA that I know about. And much like any other sucker, they have the ventrally located mouth facing down, but theirs is longer and even grosser looking, even fleshier, more protruding. So they kind of have this protruding, sucking mouth that looks almost like a pig's snout facing downward. And I thought it might be one of those at first, but I was wrong. It wasn't one of those. Just a big, dark, white sucker. They can apparently get quite dark, depending on their habitats and their age, in fact, apparently affects that too. Like, it makes sense. Everything in nature has variations, dependent on the environment in which they live. darker coloration one would have a higher likelihood of living longer in a darker stream bottom, right? Yeah. But the way you can tell that it's a white sucker, other than like the scale sizes, there is something about the scale sizes. It doesn't matter. They have a white belly. Little suckerfish? It wasn't little. Yeah, yeah. I guess they kind of are a bit like those. I know a lot of people like algae-eating fish in their aquarium. Suckers are interesting things. A lot of them will eat just about anything they'll find on the stream bottom. But the hog sucker in particular really likes doing this weird thing with rocks. It'll scrape like algae and caddisfly larvae off of rocks. It'll dig into the stream bottom and just scrape this gunk off of all the rocks around them. So yeah, in a sense, they're fish that clean the environment as well. But the one I caught, the white sucker that I caught, uh, it wasn't small. It had to be about 2 pounds, probably 17, 18 inches. I don't know how that... I don't know how long that would be in meters or centimeters, so I don't care. But it was about 2 pounds. It was a really disappointing fight, if I'm being honest. Like, it just let me pull it in. Like, it was just dead weight on the end of my line. I thought I got snagged on something when I first started reeling it in. Like, that happens a lot. When you fish the bottom of a riverbed or a creek bed or something, you'll snag on twigs and rocks, and you'll just pull up dead weight, and that's all I thought I was pulling. But no, I reeled it in, and yeah, it was definitely the worst fight of the season. I know that's strange to think about, right? But anglers do consider it fighting. Anglers call it that. We call it fight, right? Like, imagine that. You're going back into a grimy alleyway, out of the light of the street lamps and the eyes of pedestrians, behind the oozing dumpsters. Imagine seeing a man in fishing waders putting up his dukes against a man-sized fish flopping around on the ground. That's kind of what it feels like to be an angler. Bare-knuckle boxing. Only it isn't. I didn't fight in the streets. Technically, the streets would be my home turf, and I would have the home turf advantage there, right? What I did is actually much worse. We're getting snagged on that again, aren't we? If I have to cut my line again, I'm gonna be very angry. But yeah, I didn't do that. If you think about it, I kind of invaded its home and wrestled it outside of its safety just so that I could throw it back. Why would I do that? Am I, like, asserting my dominance over it in nature? I guess anglers have a bit of a complex, right? Especially the sports anglers, the ones who do catch and release. We just do it because we can do it. Because we have the power to rip an animal from its living space and force it into terrifying and unlivable conditions beyond its mortal understanding of the world. Everything that it's ever known, we just take that away from it. Like, nothing else in nature does that. If a hawk swipes a fish from a waterway, that's it. The fish experiences the air for the first time, and the final time. But humans? No. We put them back. It's the most brutal thing I've ever seen. A lovely sport. I highly encourage others to try it, if they ever get the chance. God, I love fishing. It's just such a fun hobby, you know? Like, I know, I'm making it sound awful on purpose, but there is a lot of fun to it. There's a lot of thought, right? Just like any other sport, you have to know what you're doing. You have to gain skills. It is very much like an alien abduction for a fish. I agree with you. And I understand why people would be, hesitant to do that. Like, I understand. I consider it cruel, and I still do it. But I don't know. I feel like it's something like a chess game, right? It's nature's version of chess. You've got to be able to read the board, and the board here is the waterway. And you've got to be able to present a nice, tasty bait, a sacrificial pawn, if you will. And you've got to have your opponent seize upon that bait so that you can yank it right out of its home. and then say, look, I conquered it. I won the game. And then you throw it back for other people to do the same. Or maybe to catch them and eat them later. I don't like eating fish that haven't been in the water for too long. They're very hard to clean. So I don't like cleaning them either. But I do occasionally. I just think it's a fun sport. And I understand how cruel it is. Like, that's the first thing I think about every time I go fishing. Well, it's kind of cruel, isn't it? I'm using this live bait, that's cruel, to catch a fish, that's cruel. Like hooking into its mouth with a metal barb, definitely cruel. And then fighting it to exhaustion by pulling on it until it gets pulled out of the water entirely, that's very cruel. um, so yeah, I do think about that every single time I go fishing. And I'll never not think about that. That's the first thought I always have. Um, I like the chess game aspect of it, though, you know? I like reading the water. I like figuring out where fish might be. And I like knowing that I'm right. That's what it comes down to. I like knowing that I know how to fish. I've spent a lot of time doing this. I've spent a lot of time acquiring the experience and the information, thinking about it, actually fishing in the streams and knowing this is a good spot, that's a bad spot, or this could be a good spot depending on the year. And I like trying things. I like doing new things. And I like growing, right? Yeah, I like growing. As a fisherman, as an angler, um, as a person, I just like growing. So I like the sport a lot because it offers a lot of opportunities to learn new things, in nature especially. Like, you wouldn't believe how important it is to know what the stream bed is like in order to fish properly. Um, some fish only live in sandy bottoms. Some fish prefer rocky bottoms. Some fish, they like deeper holes. Some fish like slower water. Like a lot of fish like slower water, but you know what I mean. They have different tolerances, and they have different eating habits. They'll eat at different times of the day, or they'll go after different things depending on the time of the year. A lot of fly fishermen have it much worse than I do, right? I don't concern myself with fly fishing. It's too much thought, too much effort. Um, I really admire fly fishermen, fly anglers, but it's not for me. You've got to pay way too much attention to your environment, right? Like, there are different kinds of hatches, right? When fly fishermen, fly anglers talk about hatches, they're talking about things like mayflies. The sulfurs have hatched, so you gotta use sulfur-colored ties. I don't want to think about that. Or you've got to use a caddis lure because there are a lot of caddis fly larvae on the bottom of this rocky stream bed. I don't want to think about that either. Like, sure, you might catch more fish because you're presenting something that's more natural in the environment. I get the logic of it. I understand. But that doesn't mean I want to do it. I am impressed that people do it. But it's not for me, you know? I don't think it'll ever be for me. You know what? We're cutting that line. We're walking down this way a little bit, away from that bank over there. That bank is where we're getting snagged a lot. And the fish just love doing that in real life as well. They'll go up towards a shallow section and start flailing around to try and unhook themselves. So you've got to keep the pressure on the line as well. I know, I know. Probably not the most interesting thing, but it's true. You gotta understand these little dynamics in order to fish in real life. Oh, we missed our bite there. We missed our bite there too. Anyway, that's enough for fishing today, I think. The main topic that I wanted to talk about was, the new id video that I put out. So I finally finished Resonant Words, episode 1. Or at least, I finished it to a degree that I was happy with it, right? There were some elements that I had to be more careful on than I wanted to be. Like, I actually wanted to use the audio from the episodes because I think the voice acting was fantastic. I think whoever played Frank Marlin did a much better job of saying his voice lines than I did. But I didn't want to get copyright claimed or struck, so I wanted to stick very clearly into fair use policies, which is why I had the weird backgrounds and the transparent images, like the frames from the show. I highly recommend that anybody who is interested in what I was talking about actually watch the original episode, Trigun Peacemaker. It'll make a lot more sense. It's episode 3 in the 1998 series. I love it so much that whenever I get a hankering for Trigun, I'll usually just put on Peacemaker and watch it. I know the episode title. That's how much I watch it, and I really do love it. But, yeah, despite the thing resonating with me, I guess it didn't really resonate with a lot of viewers. I don't know. I guess people didn't really like the presentation. Maybe they didn't like Id's voice. Maybe they didn't like the weird backgrounds. Maybe they didn't like the music. But there was something that made a lot of people click off of that video. um, But I had fun making it, you know? I feel like that's the content that I wanted to make, and I'm glad I did. It was worth making it. I feel that strongly. I'll be honest here. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of creating content. The things that most people don't like talking about. Things like numbers, or views, or subscribers, or followers, or whatever else. They're useful metrics. Been very tired. Oh, I see. Well, that's okay. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to. And you can watch it whenever you want. It's not going anywhere. So if you do ever want to watch it, feel free. And if you don't, feel free. I've been doing other things as well, right? I haven't been focusing on content creation much as of late. A lot of my free time went into fishing. Actually fishing in real life. So I understand, right? And sometimes you do get tired of content and you don't want to watch it. That's cool too, you know? My content's not going anywhere. But, what was I talking about? Oh, right. I was talking, numbers and views and subscribers and all that kind of stuff. I think they're useful as metrics. Oh, well, yeah, sometimes life is like that too. I'm sorry to hear it, but, yeah, you don't have to, yeah, sometimes life is like that. And, it's always unfortunate when life gets like that. As I always say, like, always take care of yourselves. I'm not really going anywhere. My content isn't going anywhere. No matter what happens, the content's always gonna be there. I'm not gonna take my channel down. It's very much just going to remain, so always take care of yourselves first. Always focus on your own health and your own well-being. I think that's what I'd want from anyone watching my content. You don't have to be here, live. It's always nice if you are, and if you want to interact, that's fine too. But you don't have to. I hope no one ever feels like they need to. That's the thing. It's always welcome, but you never need to. I'll be perfectly fine rambling to myself if you feel tired and you don't have energy to do something. Yeah. Anyway, numbers, viewers, subscribers, things like that. I do use them as helpful metrics, a measure of interest in topics or ideas or concepts that I'm trying. Because I want to present content that I like, that people say is okay, right? I don't really crave external validation, but I do want to know that I'm not going insane or too insane and just going off the walls here. into my own little rabbit hole of insanity. I want it to be relatable stuff in some sense. If people enjoy it, that's good for me. That means I'm not losing my touch with reality. But that said, that's not really my end goal, you know? I have content I want to make, right? And I'm gonna make it. Even if I do end up in my own little rabbit hole of insanity, I'm gonna make the content I want to make. And, yeah, I feel like sharing my own experiences and the things which resonated with me, that's kind of the content I wanted to make. I wanted to showcase things, my experiences. I wanted to showcase how I felt, the things that resonated with me. That's the kind of content that I wanted to make with id, and I'm happy to finally be making it, you know? In a way, I see my channel, especially these videos that are stranger, like Rupert Grint's How the Grinch Stole Grinchmas, Part 2. I see these strange little explorations as, I don't know, a sort of, a sort of strange epitaph to myself, a little bit of a legacy, you know what I mean? I'm not dying or anything, don't get the wrong idea. I just mean that when I do eventually end the channel, for whatever reason it may be, the content's still gonna be there. um, and these experiences that actually mattered to me will be preserved for as long as YouTube preserves them. And I kind of find that to be meaningful in a way, right? Because as far as I can see it, all we are our experiences and the derivatives of those experiences, right? The things that are made from those experiences that get amalgamated, synthesized, or condensed inside of ourselves in unique ways. So these little bits of content that might not do well for viewers, for people out there, general audiences, they're a little bit of my actual self in video format that I want to make and preserve. Like a fossil, or maybe more like a time capsule. Something that's me. Something that's me that gets put out there. It's not completely me, but it's one of my experiences, so it's part of me. Incomplete, just like most fossils tend to be, but at least something preserved, right? And I did say we were getting into darker, heavier topics today. I gave that warning earlier, so I apologize, but I'm gonna come out and say it. I really love death. Not in the goth way, not in the serial killer way, but I love the concept of death. Though there's nothing wrong with, like, a goth way of liking death. There's probably something wrong with a serial killer liking death, but you know, in the philosophical way, I like the concept of death. And there are entire fields of philosophy devoted to it. One of them is called Thanatology, from the, I think it's Greek god of death, Thanatos, which is also where the name Thanos comes from. There's a nice little tie-in for pop culture. But I guess a better way of saying it isn't that I like death. I like that humans have this thing called mortality, right? We have a sense that everything we ever were will one day cease to be in this world. And perhaps it'll be forgotten completely. And perhaps I'm coping. Maybe I'm just trying to make the best out of a bad situation. But I feel like the concept of mortality is sort of classically romantic. I don't mean like love romance, I mean romanticism, the movement, classically romantic. Very much in line with naturalists that used to write poems about nautiloids. That kind of romantic. I idealize it a little bit. I value it. I think that death gives our lives meaning. There's one school of thought, the narrative approach to death, where people treat death and life a bit like a novel, right? Novels have beginnings, they have middles, they have ends. But the beginning of a novel is only as important as it is because there's a definite end to the story, right? There's something that makes it all tie together and feel complete. And for human lives, that's death, the event of death. That's what ties it all together. And that allows us to conceptualize our own lives in a stronger way. If we were to die right now, like you could think about how your life would be portrayed based on what you've already done. Your ending is now, therefore your middle was before, and your beginning is pretty much set, right? I don't know. I think the end helps us to put the beginning into a more meaningful and understandable perspective, right? Like, think about any of the classic stories or any of the popular stories out there. Would we feel the same about, I don't know, Harry Potter's abusive relationship with the Dursleys if we didn't know how his story ended? He had a happy ending until you got to Pottermore, I guess. But I think the beginning isn't as important as it seemed to be when we first started reading those stories, when we first started watching those movies, until you start to understand the Dursleys a little bit more later on in the story. Petunia was jealous of Lily, and uh, Vernon, I think his name was just a yes man under the thumb of his wife. um, they weren't good people, but they had reasons for doing what they did to Harry. I think a part of that was probably them wanting to protect him. Like, Petunia, if she had any kind of maternal instinct for Harry, probably wanted him to not be a wizard so he wouldn't end up dead like Lily. In fact, his entire existence was a reminder of her dead sister, who she was extremely jealous of. Yeah, I don't know. But the happy ending, or even the death ending, where Harry finds out he's the last whatever he was. I don't want to spoil that, but maybe I already have. And he kind of dies. That's more meaningful because of the beginnings, right? Here was this abused kid, and he kind of rose his way from that, from the very bottom, and became something great. So, the beginnings actually do matter, but only in relation to the end. If he had never become a wizard, if the end was that he just died after living a normal life, we probably wouldn't care too much about Harry Potter's life. That's what I think. He would have just been like an accountant or something, working in a cubicle somewhere. No one would have really cared. But because he saved the wizarding world, yeah, it had meaning. All the beginning stuff, all the stuff that was less pleasant in his life, it had meaning. Yeah. It's really the choices and the sacrifices and the values shown throughout the story, but it's the ending that really puts the finality to it. It makes all of those things actually matter. If there's no ending to a story, then the choices really don't reflect too heavily. If self-sacrifice, say that there were a soldier in a war, and this happens a lot, or it used to. Say there were a soldier in a trench, and a grenade comes flying into the trench, and the soldier jumps on the grenade. That's self-sacrifice. And whatever you feel about soldiers, that's the person who's saving other people's lives by sacrificing his or her own. So, it's the act of sacrifice that reflects the values, and the finality of it that reflects the admiration of the event, I think. Yeah, that's how I see it, at least. And I know, a lot of people don't like thinking about this kind of thing, but I think about it almost constantly. Like, I have obsessive thoughts, but not about this, and this isn't really something I think about to an obsessive extent, but, too much of anything is unhealthy, right? Too much sugar is unhealthy, too much corn syrup is unhealthy, too much Red Lake number 40 is unhealthy. But I constantly mull over it whenever I get the chance, and I ask myself, what is it exactly that I'm leaving behind when I do leave everything behind? What am I doing with what limited time I have? And these questions help me put things into a clearer perspective for me. They make me better understand what I'm valuing and doing in the moment. And sometimes they help me to better contextualize my own decisions. They're kind of like guiding forces for future decisions, too. Because if I were unhappy with how I would leave things if I were to suddenly just disappear, then that means I'm not doing something right with what I'm doing right now, right? So, in that sense, thinking about your own mortality is actually sometimes beneficial, so long as you don't do it too much. It can help you better understand, or it can help some people. I won't say it's a one-size-fits-all thing, but it can help some people to reflect and start making better use of their time, or start actually, I don't know, finding out what's important to them if they don't already know. I find these very important questions and answers, and it's just useful to me to think about my life from that, or from that perspective from time to time, you know? Yeah, I feel like it's very useful. Um, ooh, The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Tolstoy, I think is a classic example of exactly that kind of philosophy. It's a great short story. More people ought to read it. But I know death is seen as something as kind of unnatural in the modern West. It didn't used to be this way. You know, back in the 1800s, even, people would have their dead loved ones on display in like wake rooms or living rooms. They got converted into wake rooms, and they would just have the body there decomposing for weeks at a time until family could arrive from distant places and they could have a proper funeral. So death was actually there for the children to see. It was there for the adults to see. It was just another part of life. And some philosophers argue that the creation of morgues and mortuaries and funeral homes and the like, and refrigeration and embalming, so on and so forth, the advancement of those things have kind of made death less natural to us. It's less a part of our existence. It's less a part of our experience as a species. Because we rarely come into contact with dead bodies that aren't refrigerated or embalmed. um, Most of us, a lot of us don't at least. I'm sure we've all seen a dead body that hasn't been embalmed or refrigerated at some point, even if it's just an animal. I've had to bury a lot of pets myself, and it's never easy. And humans, well, humans are humans. They're just another animal in that sense. So I guess for me, death is just another part of living. It's just a part of it. Anyway, those kind of questions, those kind of thought processes absolutely influence the kinds of content that I want to create, and they will always do so. Even if I think the idea is, oh, this is a great idea, it's so fun, I want to make it, but I know no one's going to want to watch that. I know it's too crazy, that it's not interesting content to most people. It doesn't matter. That's not why I'm making content. Like, it's nice when people enjoy my content. It really is. And I'm happy for it. But, that's not really the intention. You know, maybe it would be easier to contextualize what I'm talking about if, we examined the hierarchy of needs, right? Like, you know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Abraham Maslow. Uh, yeah, Abraham Maslow, I think his name was. And he created this hierarchy, this pyramid of needs. It started with a base of physiological needs and went to safety needs. Security needs, I guess, would also be the same thing as safety. Then it was love and belonging, I think. Then esteem, and then finally at the very top, at the smallest portion of the pyramid, was self-actualization. So I guess I'll give a brief overview of those. Physiological needs are like the basics of the basics, things like food, water, shelter, that kind of stuff. And safety is knowing that things like that won't be taken away or changed suddenly. Uh, you're secure in your needs, right? And you know you're secure with your basic needs. And then after that, love and belonging, well, they're pretty self-explanatory, right? People want to feel accepted. They want a place to belong. And I guess in nature, if you don't have your own resources secured, it's a lot harder to actually belong somewhere. It's a lot harder to actually start putting down relationships because those might be people that you're competing with for resources. So yeah, that can be pretty tough. And then what was the next one? Oh yeah, esteem. We need to know that our actions are meaningful, right? That we're doing things that others approve of. We need external validation from time to time. We need less of that than we need physiological needs. That's why the pyramid gets smaller the closer you get to the top. And few people actually, like, a lot of people view the hierarchy of needs in one of two ways, right? The way I'm viewing it is in how much of it we need. Everybody needs physiological needs taken care of. Everybody needs, or more people need, what was it? Security. And less people need love and belonging, and less people need esteem, and less people need self-esteem. But that's not typically the classical way of looking at the hierarchy of needs. I know that. The classical way is how many people actually get to these steps. So a lot of people get their physiological needs met, then slightly less people get their safety needs met, and then slightly less people than that get their love and belonging needs met, and then even less get their esteem needs met, and then even fewer, the fewest in fact, get their self-actualization needs met. That's the classical way of looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That works too. um, I don't know. I think there are exceptions to every generalization, every model. So take it with a grain of salt, and I'll just look at it my way and say it's an adaptation after Maslow. Yeah. But I think a lot of people do need that external validation of finding that their actions are meaningful because, you know, a lot of people don't like thinking that they're not. But me, um, my content is kind of a path to self-actualization, and I've always treated it that way. Like, I've said it before, uh, a lot of my content creation, a lot of my streaming is about improving myself. Well, that's just self-actualization, isn't it? It's discovering myself, creating myself through making these videos in some ways. I'm birthing myself into the world as I work through the creation of this content, especially the content that I want to make, even though I know most people won't enjoy it. And in doing so, I kind of leave this legacy of myself behind. A legacy of my experiences, my trials, my failures, my successes, my hopes, my desires, and a record of my efforts as well. You know what I mean? Self-birthing? Yeah, I know. It's a great image. I think everybody ought to give birth to themselves at some point in their lives. Yeah, not enough people do that. I really do think that people take that all for granted, you know? Just being. I sometimes feel like I don't exist at all. In a lot of ways, I feel like I don't exist at all. So I can't really take it for granted, no matter how much I act like it. It's a certainty. I actually do exist, right? Sure, sure, a lot of people say that. I don't believe it. I think you're taking it for granted. It's a matter of faith that you think you exist. And further, I make the distinction between what I call existing and what I call being very clearly in my own head. There's a difference between simply existing and actually being. Or sometimes I call it living, right? Sometimes I call it living. You can exist without living, just like a rock does. um, I don't know if you can live without being. Maybe, or live without existing. Maybe you can. I've never seen it. It's like a mind without a brain. Maybe it exists. Theoretically, it probably should, but I've never seen it. Sometimes it feels like I'm kind of outside the normal bubble of being that most people are just naturally there, existing in for their whole lives. I kind of get this outsider perspective. Although I'm not entirely outside of it, I kind of get more of a glimpse of what's beyond their bubbles, I think. And that's for better and worse. It's different. It's not necessarily better. It's just different. They get to live in these bubbles their entire lives and take it for granted, and they usually don't consider these things. And that's enviable, in a way, right? I don't find it a bad thing. I find it very enviable in some ways. And I value it in humanity. I value things even when I don't have them, especially when I don't have them sometimes. Hyde alien confirmed. Yes. Yes, I am an alien. It's true. But I do value these things that I don't necessarily have. In particular, because I don't have them. It's very easy to envy something you don't have because you only have a conception of it and you don't know what's really there. You just think you do. And you know you don't have it. So it's very easy to become envious of that, to want it, even if you don't know what it is. Yeah. Anyway, I'm happy I was able to get that id video out there. That's what this is all about, right? Me talking about the id video. Trigun as an anime series means a lot to me. It meant a lot to me as a kid, and it still means a lot to me. I still watch it from time to time. It's one of the few anime series that I can watch either the subs of or the dubs without any problems, right? There aren't too many that I prefer to watch the dubs of. It's usually just Trigun and a couple others where the dubs are interesting or very well done. And in recent years, dubs have been getting better. Oh, we could probably fish another bit. Our net isn't entirely full yet. But it was one of my favorite anime series back when I was younger. It was one of it was one of those series that just kind of had it all. You know, the music was amazing. The music really was amazing. If you ever have anything to do with the show, if you ever want to give anything a shot, and you're not really sure about anime in general, just listen to the original soundtrack. It's available online. I think it's the first donut and the second donut, maybe. I don't know. Something about donuts. But listen to the OST. It's very great. The dubbing is, again, highest quality of dubbing I've seen. And the animation is absolutely beautiful. Like, it's classic animation. It's not cel-shaded. It's not computer-generated. It's actually animated. Would you believe that? And at the time, like, the only other anime series that I was watching that I was exposed to were things like Dragon Ball Z. Watched a lot of that. Or Inuyasha. Or Rurouni Kenshin, of course. By the way, Dragon Ball Z was a large part of my life as a kid. And I gotta say, Piccolo and Gohan were the best parts of Dragon Ball Z. And I really can't stand Goku. Which is interesting to me, right? Like, I like a lot of Monkey King media and portrayals. I watch a lot of Monkey King movies. Stephen Chow is very great with his Monkey King. uh, but yeah, I don't know. There's something about Goku's portrayal of the Monkey King that just doesn't do it for me. I've always had a soft spot for monkeys in general. So the fact that he had a tail was okay. But then, as the seasons progressed, it just got less and less Monkey King and more screaming at you while charging up my power level. The thing I like about the Monkey King, and his portrayal in a lot of films and stories, even games nowadays, is that he's a mischievous monkey. And I love the mischievous monkey trope. It's not like he's a hero in most of the stories either. In a lot of stories, he's the villain or the anti-hero, and he's just led by the hand um, on this path to enlightenment. um, yeah, and he's not the hero in a lot of the stories. So I guess Goku doesn't have to be the perfect protagonist, uh, which is good because I don't think he is. But if I had to pick any portrayal of Goku, I think the Dragon Ball, yeah, the Dragon Ball Goku was better than the Dragon Ball Z version of him. But yeah, yeah. That's an aside about Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, I did watch hypermasculine fighting anime before. Uh, Not so much nowadays. Mostly Isekai trash. But I spent many a sleepless summer nights passing out to the ending theme of Trigun. Whenever I hear that song to this day, I kind of get a little bit sleepy. It's very strange, like some kind of Pavlovian conditioned response to the stimulus of the sounds in the ending. There's that very strange singing, and the music is just I don't know. There's something about the combination of those things, and how often I fell asleep to that in the middle of the night, around I don't know 2 to 5 a.m. But the video, right? We were talking about the video, right? Frank Marlin. Frank Marlin was. A lot of people say the phrase "a person is like a spirit animal" to them, but Frank Marlin really was like that for me. The way he saw the world, and how even his kind, or yeah, his kind actions effects on others. I, the way he saw these things were just very unique to me. And as a kid, it was an interesting perspective. See, I was always taught that you should do something if you feel like it needs done. That doing something is better than the alternative of not doing something. That doing something is good because then at least you tried. You tried to make the world a better place. But seeing Frank in that show and how his actions caused him to lose pretty much everything that was meaningful in his life gave me an alternative that I'd never been exposed to before. um, and I started internalizing that philosophy a little bit, right? Yeah. I started internalizing that maybe he has a point, that if you don't do anything, you can't exactly make things worse, can you? Well, they're gonna stay as bad as they've always been, essentially. And I know the ending of Peacemaker picks apart at his philosophy, and he changes his mind. But I do think there was something in there that was fundamentally right, that there was some kind of logic to it at least, that you won't be responsible for the consequences of your actions if you don't actually take any actions in the first place. That makes a certain sense, right? There is a certain kind of logic to it. That said, again, not taking an action still has consequences. And that's kind of what the ending of the episode Peacemaker was really about. Um, but yeah, I don't know. um, the situation was not equal, I guess. And his inaction had consequences too. I don't know. It was just a profound experience for me, seeing this alternative, I guess, way of living, way of being that seemed to make sense at the time, and for all intents and purposes, still kind of makes a little bit of sense to me now. In fact, yeah, I still think I cling to some of Frank's thoughts in some moments, even as an adult, even as current-eyed, I still think about them. Yeah. And I still kind of agree with them a little bit. There are other things I wanted to do with the video, right? I wanted to actually show the animation. I wanted to actually show the dialogue, because I thought that's the best way of actually discussing it. But I wanted to make sure that I was using fair use as much as possible. I was editing things. I wasn't replacing the need to watch the episode. Again, please do watch the episode. It's a fantastic episode, it's a fantastic series. So please do watch it. I'm not replacing it with my video. So please, please do not sue, do not copyright claim, it is fair use. I promise you I did the best I could. Let's go sell our fish. Oops. Yeah. Other than that, you know, I haven't really been doing too much content creation as of right now. I've mostly been doing real-life stuff. I'm still working on an updated version of my cookie recipe. Do you remember when I did that? When I used to do like hand cam stuff and I used to show baking recipes or whatever? Yeah, I was working on that again. I was working on the cookie recipe that I have posted. I have an improved version. It's much improved. The end results, no, we're not fishing here. We're fishing over here this time. Ooh, this game controls like moving through Jello. Yay, baking Hyde, that's right. Well, you know, maybe not yay. We'll get into that. Let's go fishing here. Where's my reticle? Where are you? I don't know where I'm casting. Okay, we were off screen. Great. Okay, that's fine. There we go. We're gonna cast here. So yeah, I have a much improved version. I don't know if I'll make a different video on that, but the end results are more consistent. But you know what? I made them the other week, and I very much do like the improved texture, the improved standardization of the outcome. But as I said earlier, I get these sort of obsessive thoughts in my head, and I thought to myself, just last night, what could I do to improve what I'm already happy with? You ever have thoughts like that? You're not satisfied with something that you're happy with? That's one of the strangest human experiences I've ever had. I should be happy. I should be satisfied with something I'm satisfied with. But I'm not. And the human existence is just like that, right? Or at least there are people like me that are like that. And people like me that are like that, we're just never satisfied again. I wanted to, specifically this time, add cinnamon into my cookie dough recipe. And the last time I added cinnamon to the improved recipe, it kinda clashed with the peanut butter, you know? And I didn't like that. How can I reinvent the wheel? Exactly. Exactly, that's fair. Trying to reinvent the wheel. That's exactly right. So it clashed with the peanut butter, and I thought, peanut butter is the main ingredient for these peanut butter oatmeal cookies. It's what makes them what they are. So I'll just remove that. I'll remove the most important ingredient, just so I can get some cinnamon flavor in there. Just get rid of it. Just get rid of the peanut butter. 10,000 IQ move. I know. The peanut butter was pulling double duty. It was replacing things like eggs and fats to some degree. And I thought to myself, if it's taking the place of eggs and fats, what if I could just replace peanut butter with eggs and see how that went? And it turns out, I looked it up before I did it, that there is a conversion for it. I don't know if it's real, because it was given to me by Google AI, and I don't trust Google AI. Google AI lies to me all the time. I decided to give it a try. It gave me the conversion that 3 tablespoons of peanut butter is equivalent to 1 egg in a baking recipe. A 3ent? I don't know what a 3ent is. I know what a treant is. Lord of the Rings. But yeah, I don't know. I gave it a try using this conversion in reverse. Yeah, it was a different recipe entirely. It was no longer peanut butter oatmeal cookies, it was just oatmeal cookies with an egg instead of peanut butter. And extra cinnamon, because I do like cinnamon. And you know what? I did it in reverse instead of using... Because 80 grams of peanut butter is essentially... I don't know. I think it's maybe 6 tablespoons of peanut butter if I had to guess. Maybe 3 to 6 depending on how big your tablespoon is. But I decided to put 1 egg for all of the peanut butter. Because I figured there was probably still more peanut butter than egg. There's more than 3 tablespoons of peanut butter, so 1 egg should be more than enough. Or it should be less than enough, in fact. And I won't have it too liquidy, too wet. But it didn't work out. It really didn't. I ended up with a really soupy kind of mess. It just wouldn't stiffen up into a proper cookie dough. It was more of a batter than a dough, really. And when I had that realization, I thought to myself, well, whatever. It's not going to work, so I just added a little bit more flour into it. And I scooped it into baking cups, and I baked them like they were muffins, yeah? So now I have these interesting little oatmeal muffins. I don't know if you want to have an interesting baked good. Like, maybe that's not the right thing to go for. Maybe you want something that tastes good. Maybe you want something with a nice texture. No, no. I have these interesting little oatmeal muffins. And they're somewhat... let's be honest here, they're not very sweet at all. The recipe I had for cookies was as minimal sugar as possible. So they weren't very sweet cookies to begin with. And a lot of the peanut butter was pulling the duty of sweetness there too. Better than a boring one. I don't know about that. They're interesting, you know? They're not very sweet. They have a sort of dense crumb to them. But they remind me of cakes, right? Like all of the oatmeal, the grains of oats have disappeared because of the baking process. They did sort of turn into a cakey consistency. It's somewhere between a quick bread and a cake. Skilled at creating strange things. Oatmeal muffin cups, coffee wine. I have obsessive thoughts, okay? I told you, I have these obsessive thoughts, and I need to do something with them. I know how I could improve them immediately, right? Like these muffins, the texture is fine. You would never know that they're oatmeal except they taste slightly of oatmeal. I could dust them with powdered sugar, and they'd be a lot like a cake donut in a way, or something like that. Or I could make like a lemon glaze using lemon juice and powdered sugar, and I could coat that on the top, and they'd be fantastic. I would very much enjoy them. But at the same time, I kind of don't care. Eating is a hassle for me. A chore, really. So I'm not going to do anything but eat them, and, you know, just never make that recipe again like that. I'll probably still work on it, just because I want to. But, yeah, I wanted to share that neat little conversion that Google AI told me would work and didn't. Thank you, Google AI. But you're wrong. Yeah. Maybe I was wrong with my conversion. Maybe it's not one-to-one both ways. That could be true, too. Maybe it's only peanut butter. It can substitute for eggs, and eggs can't substitute for peanut butter. Makes a lot of sense that way. But, you know, it was a neat little conversion, and I wanted to give it a try. Even if I don't know if it'll actually work or not, it's still fun to try, right? It's all about learning and then experimenting. Exactly as you say, it's strange. I make strange things, but that's how the world gets new things, right? That's how the world gets new things. Maybe not great things, but new things nonetheless. And as we know, blind progress is always a good thing, even when it leads you to weird muffins, or even straight off a cliff. Blind progress is great. I think that's where we're going to end it today. I had a fun time. I hope you did too. We had a good discussion there. Heavier topics than I usually care for, so I am sorry for that. If you wanted something lighthearted, I understand. Just wasn't in the cards tonight. I've been busy. But I had a lot of fun. Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed it too. this is where we're gonna end it, I think, yeah. So, I will see you all again next time. But for now, Hyde out. Click, click. I love you all. Good night. See you again next time.